Hey, old-timer, what was your rating back in the Dark Ages? Zero G, janitor, third class. The voice, slick with the unearned confidence of youth and peak genetic conditioning, cut through the low hum of the grav field generator. It belonged to Cadet Captain Kalen, a striker whose bioengineered physique was a testament to the pinnacle of human martial enhancement. He stood with two of his squad mates, their energy drink containers filled with the kind of high-yield stimulants required to forge living weapons. They formed an intimidating triangle around a small observation bench where one man sat alone. Elias Vance, age unknown but ancient by any standard, didn't look up from the swirling holographic star chart projected before him. He swiped a finger through a nebula with a hand that was steady, a stark contrast to the wrinkled, almost translucent skin that covered it. He wore a simple woven tunic, clothes that looked out of place and out of time amidst the sea of shimmering smart fabric uniforms and chrome implants. He watched the star chart, his gaze fixed on a point somewhere beyond the far wall of the bustling Starfire Academy training facility. Kalen smirked at his comrades, who chuckled in appreciation of their leader's wit. "I'm talking to you, Relic. This is a restricted military spire. You need clearance to be here. Or did you just wander in from the orbital retirement habitat, looking for a free nutrient paste?" The atmosphere in the observation lounge, never truly quiet, began to shift. The cacophony of 100 separate holographic communications began to falter. The soft chime of data streams became more distinct as other sounds faded. Heads, augmented with optical implants, were beginning to turn. This was more than just a young striker being arrogant. It was a performance, and an old man was the unwilling centerpiece. Elias finished his observation of the star chart. He deactivated the projection with a gentle tap, the light vanishing without a sound. His movements were economical, devoid of any wasted energy. He still hadn't made eye contact with the enhanced cadet looming over him. This placid refusal to engage seemed to fuel Kalen's arrogance. He leaned in, planting his powerful forearms on the edge of the bench, a clear invasion of the old man's space. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." Kalen's voice dropped from a mocking tenor to a low growl. "We have standards here. We don't just let any natural stroll in and take up a bench. So I'm going to ask you again, who are you and what are you doing in my training spire?" The possessive pronoun "my" hung in the recycled air, thick and odious. Several of the younger cadets at nearby terminals shifted uncomfortably. They knew Kalen, knew his reputation. He was a phenomenal warrior, a prodigy of the Striker program. But he wore his rank like a crown and treated anyone outside his elite circle with a casual disdain that bordered on contempt. Elias finally turned his head. His eyes, a pale, watery gray, seemed to hold a profound weariness, but underneath it there was something else, a stillness, a depth. It was like looking at the event horizon of a distant black hole, calm and absolute, hinting at the immense gravitational force hidden within. He looked at Kalen's face, then at the gleaming Striker emblem pinned to his chest, and then back to his eyes. He said nothing. "What? Your audio receptors failing?" One of Kalen's friends chimed in. "He asked you a question." "Let me see some clearance," Kalen demanded, straightening up. His hand gestured impatiently. This was a gross overstep of his authority, and everyone in the room knew it. A cadet captain had no right to demand clearance from a visitor. That was the job of the Academy's wardens. But no one was going to call out a striker. The social cost was too high. Elias Vance reached not for a datapad, but for a small, tarnished pin on the collar of his tunic. It was a simple design, a pair of stylized wings with a small, dark star in the center, its details worn smooth with age. He touched it gently, a ghost of a memory in his eyes. The world around Elias seemed to momentarily recede. The sterile, metallic scent of the spire was replaced by the smell of ozone and burning metal. The low hum of the lounge became the high-pitched scream of a dying starship's reactor. He felt the phantom pressure of a hand on his shoulder, a young woman's hand, strong and sure. A voice, barely a whisper over the roar of battle, saying, "See you on the other side, Spectre." The memory was a flash, a single frame from a lifetime ago, but it was as real as the bench beneath him. The pin on his collar was not a trinket. It was a promise, a ghost of a memory, for the specter of Cygnus X1. He blinked, and the lounge solidified around him once more. Kalen's angry face was inches from his own. Across the large room, monitoring the energy feeds, was technician Lena. At 19, Lena was still new to the fleet, full of idealistic notions about honor and respect. She had been watching the encounter with a growing sense of sickness. She saw her own grandfather, a proud engineer who fought in the Orion Wars, treated with similar casual dismissal. Seeing it happen here, in the heart of the fleet, felt like a sacrilege. She saw Kalen's hand move toward the old man's shoulder, an act of aggression that was a point of no return. Lena knew she couldn't step in. She was a technician. Kalen was a striker. Intervening would be career suicide, but doing nothing felt like a betrayal. Her eyes darted to the emergency comms panel. An idea, desperate and probably stupid, sparked in her mind. She knew who to call, not the wardens. She needed someone higher, someone who dealt not just in rules, but in history. Lena slipped away from her console, her heart hammering. She activated the comms panel, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. She routed a priority message to the office of the Academy's lorekeeper, a man known throughout the fleet simply as the Archivist. Archivist Theron was a living legend. If anyone would understand, it would be him. The reply was instant, a text-only message from a junior scribe. The Archivist is in a closed session. State your purpose. There's a situation in the main training lounge, Lena typed, her voice a rushed whisper into the audio pickup. A striker cadet, Kalen, is harassing an elderly visitor. He's about to physically remove him. The scribe's tone was bored. File a report with the warden's technician. The visitor's name is Elias Vance. Lena cut in. There was a pause. A long, profound silence. Then, a new voice came on the line, gravelly and hard as asteroid rock. This is Archivist Theron. What did you just say? Archivist, Lena stammered, standing a little straighter. Cadet Captain Kalen is about to drag an old man named Elias Vance out of the lounge. Another silence, but this one was different. It was heavy, charged with an energy Lena couldn't comprehend. Technician, Theron's voice was dangerously quiet. You keep your eyes on Elias Vance. You do not let him out of your sight. Help is on the way. The line went dead. In the command spire a kilometer away, Archivist Theron stood so abruptly that a priceless data crystal rattled on his desk. His face, a roadmap of long years in dusty archives, had gone pale. Give me the Commandant on my private channel. Now, Theron commanded. And find out if Grand Admiral Khan is still on the station. Her convoy was supposed to be leaving for the jump gate 10 minutes ago. Get them on the comm, tell them to turn around. Tell them it's a matter of operational history. Back in the lounge, Kalen's patience had evaporated. He tightened his grip on Elias's thin arm. All right, Grandpa. That's it. You're done. At that precise moment, the main doors of the lounge hissed open with startling speed. Framed in the doorway stood the Academy Commandant, a stern-faced woman with a chest full of campaign ribbons. Flanking her was Archivist Theron, and stepping through the doorway between them, with a quiet, deliberate authority that made the air itself seem to grow heavy, was a woman in the crisp, white uniform of a Grand Admiral of the fleet. On her shoulders were the 5 stars that marked her as the Supreme Commander. The entire lounge snapped to attention, all except for Kalen. He was frozen, his hand still clamped on Elias Vance's arm, his mouth slightly agape. The Grand Admiral's eyes swept the room before locking onto the small tableau at the center. She began to walk forward, her steps measured, silent. She stopped directly in front of Elias's bench. Her eyes went from Elias's calm face to Kalen's hand on his arm. Then the Grand Admiral did something that shattered the reality of everyone watching. She squared her shoulders, brought her heels together with an audible click, and performed the deep, formal bow of the fleet, a gesture of profound deference from the highest-ranking officer in the military to a stooped, anonymous old man. Mr. Vance. The Admiral's voice was clear, ringing with a respect that bordered on reverence. "It is an honor, sir. I apologize for this disturbance." The Admiral lowered her bow, but kept her eyes on Elias. She then turned her head slightly, her voice rising to address the silent, captivated room. "For those of you who do not know, it would be a good idea for you to remember the man you see before you. This is Elias Vance. In the year 2342, as a 20-year-old specialist in the newly formed Void Ghost Infiltration Unit, he and his team were deployed to the Cygnus X-1 anomaly. Their mission was to disable a hostile armada's primary listening post. It was codenamed Operation Nightfall." The Admiral paused. Operation Nightfall was a complete disaster. Of the 12 operatives inserted, 11 were killed in the first hour. Only one survived. For 72 hours, he evaded capture in a system crawling with enemy patrols. He not only survived, he completed the mission. Alone, he disabled all 3 listening posts using improvised explosives and his combat knife. For his actions, he was awarded the Star of Terra, the highest, most sacred award in the fleet. They called him the Spectre of Cygnus X-1. A collective soft gasp went through the room. Kalen's face, which had been flushed with anger, was now the color of ash. "The pin on his collar," the Admiral said, her eyes now boring directly into Kalen, "is the original insignia for his unit. It was given to him by his team leader, who died in his arms in the void. It is not a trinket." Elias Vance finally spoke. His voice was quiet, raspy with age, but it carried an undeniable authority. "He's just a boy." "Zura," Elias said, calling the Grand Admiral by her first name, full of fire. "We were all like that once. The service will temper him, or it will break him. Let the boy learn his lesson, but don't ruin him for it." The grace of the gesture was more stunning than the revelation of the medal. Kalen looked at Elias, his eyes swimming with a shame so profound it was painful to watch. The fallout was swift. Kalen was stripped of his cadet captain rank and placed on probation. The real punishment was the story. It spread through the fleet like wildfire. The Academy instituted a new mandatory quarterly training for all hands, Naval Heritage. The first lesson was the story of Operation Nightfall. Weeks later, a man in civilian clothes was walking through a memorial park on the station. He saw a familiar figure sitting on a bench. It was Elias Vance. The man, a visibly thinner and more somber Kalen, hesitated. He took a deep breath and approached. "Sir," Kalen's voice was quiet, stripped of all its former swagger. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." Elias looked at him, his pale gray eyes assessing. He saw not the arrogant striker, but the chastened young man. He simply nodded. "Sit down, son." They sat in silence for a minute. "You have 2 optical sensors and 1 vocalizer, Cadet," Elias said, not looking at him. "Use them in that proportion. The quietest man in the room is often the one you should listen to the most. He's listening, too, and he's learning." Kalen just nodded, unable to speak. He sat there with the old hero, the Spectre of Cygnus X-1, and for the first time in a very long time, he just listened.